The Peace of Paris marked a new turn in the European history. Between the Peace of Paris and Pan-Slovak Revolt of 1875, two important events took place. In the Peace of Paris, the Danubian principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia were not allowed to be united. Both the principalities adopted the similar constitution. In 1859, national assemblies were held in the two capitals, Jassy and Bucharest, to choose a prince. They both unanimously elected the same man, Colonel Alexander Cuza, as their head. In 1861, the union was formally proclaimed. It was called United States of Romania. It was the first dent in the structure built by the Peace of Paris. Secondly, on the eve of Franco-Prussian War in 1871, Bismarck wanted to ensure neutrality of Russia. He suggested that Prussia would raise no objection if Russia repudiated the Black Sea Clause of the Treaty of Paris and build a naval station in the Black Sea. Accordingly, Russia rearmed Sebastopol. France, after being defeated by Prussia, could take no action. England also acquiesced. The illusory calm after Peace of Paris was shattered after 2 decades. The shattering force was the wave of nationalism in the form of pan-Slavism. It aimed at the emancipation of the Slav subjects from Turkey. The goal was to establish an independent Slav national state. The source of Slav nationalism was twofold. First, the Slav felt frustrated by the failed promise of Turkey to introduce reforms. Secondly, resurgence of nation-states of Italy and Germany provided a new ray of hope. If Italy and Germany could unite, why not the Slavs? Naturally, the Slavs turned gaze towards their kinsmen, the Russians, for help and guidance. In 1875, the Slav revolt against Turkey broke out in Herzegovina. The peasants in Herzegovina refused to pay taxes and to perform customary labor services. Turkish force sent against them was defeated. The struggle was marked by brutality from both sides. The rebellion soon spread to Serbia and Montenegro. At the same time, Turkey went bankrupt. The situation became alarming as Russia was getting ready to intervene on behalf of the rebels. The great powers were alarmed at the situation in the Ottoman Empire. Hurried consultations among the League of the Three Emperors were held. Count Andrassy, the Austrian Chancellor, was authorized to prepare a note. The Andrassy note made appraisal of the causes of rebellion and suggested remedies. The Christian religion should be guaranteed full recognition, and all persecution of the Christians should cease. The economic condition of the peasants of Bosnia and Herzegovina should be improved by turning them into free proprietors of land. The direct taxes levied in Bosnia and Herzegovina should be utilized for the local needs of the provinces. A commission should be formed to supervise and execute all the reforms. It should consist of 4 Christians and 4 Muslims. The Sultan was not ready to carry out any reforms as long as rebellion lasted. The rebels were not ready to lay down the arms without substantial guarantees. The insurrection spread eastwards and it reached Bulgaria. In April 1876, the Bulgars defied the order of some Turkish officials. They emphasized their defiance by murdering over 100 of them. Turkey, enraged at the growth insubordination, was determined upon an effective revenge. A force of 18,000 regulars was marched into Bulgaria. Hordes of Turkish irregulars called Bashi Bazouks were let loose upon the Bulgarian villages. It is impossible to give accurate account of atrocities that followed. The British Embassy in Istanbul sent a second secretary, Walter Baring, to Bulgaria to investigate the stories of atrocities. He estimated the number of murdered Christians at 12,000. Others have put the figure as high as 30,000. The Bulgarian atrocities thrilled Europe with horror. William Ewart Gladstone came out of retirement to stir the British nation to action. He thundered and declared that the Turks should be cleared out bag and baggage from the province they have desolated and profaned. But Gladstone was not then Prime Minister of England, but his political rival, Disraeli, who had other views. Disraeli's concern was what Russia would do in the Balkans, then with the oppressed Bulgarian people. He minimized the scale of the Bulgarian massacres. He held that anti-Turk movement was to cover aggressive designs of Russia. The Young Turk Party felt that Sultan Abdul Aziz was too feeble to stand up to the great powers. A mini-revolution in Constantinople deposed the Sultan and placed imbecile Murad V on the throne. After 4 months he too was deposed in August 1876. His brother Abdul Hamid IV was elevated to the throne. The situation was further complicated when Serbia and Montenegro declared war on Turkey. The Turkish army struck severe blows against Serbia and Montenegro. The Serbian revolt was in danger of utter collapse if the foreign aid did not arrive in time. Russia was eager to intervene, but wary of Austrian attitude. Tsar Alexander II and Emperor Francis Joseph arrived at agreement at Reichstadt in July 1876. According to the agreement, if the war broke out between Russia and Turkey, Austria would be allowed to occupy Bosnia and Herzegovina as the price for her neutrality. Russia mobilized her army along the river Prut. She concluded a treaty of alliance with Romania on the 16th of April 1877, allowing her forces to march through Romanian territory. On the 24th of April 1877, Russia declared war on Turkey. Russian army, supported by the Romanians, crossed Danube. Their advance was checked at Plevna in July by Osman Pasha. A long siege followed. The Ottoman army led by Osman Pasha, returning from Serbia after a conflict with that country, was massed in the fortified city of Pleven, a city surrounded by numerous redoubts. At the beginning of the siege, the Russian-Romanian army managed to conquer several redoubts. The siege, which began in July 1877, did not end until December of the same year, when Osman Pasha tried unsuccessfully to force the siege to break and was wounded. Finally, Osman Pasha received the delegation, led by Mihail Serche, and accepted the conditions of capitulation offered by him. Osman Pasha, when he capitulated and declared himself a prisoner, handed over his sword to the Romanian general, Mihail Serche, commander of the Romanian troops. He was treated honorably, but his troops perished in the snow by the thousands as they straggled off into captivity. The siege of Plevna seriously delayed the main Russian advance into Bulgaria. Its end freed up Russian reinforcements, which were sent to General Joseph Vladimirovich Gorko, who then decisively defeated the Ottoman forces in the Fourth Battle of Shipka Pass. The siege was widely reported on and followed by the public in Europe and beyond. Although the declining Ottoman Empire was by this time often regarded as the sick man of Europe, its 5-month-long resistance against a much larger army earned a degree of admiration. The Turks, faced with utter defeat, sued for peace. In January 1878, by the Convention of Adrianople, the terms of armistice were agreed upon. On the basis of the convention, Treaty of San Stefano was concluded between Turkey and Russia. Montenegro and Serbia were to be recognized as independent states. Reforms were to be immediately introduced in Bosnia and Herzegovina and executed under joint control of Austria and Russia. The independence of Romania was to be recognized. In lieu of indemnity, which Russia claimed, she was to acquire Batum, Kars and a part of Bessarabia, which was to be exchanged with Romania, for a strip of Dobruja. Greater Bulgaria was to be constituted as an autonomous tributary state, extending from the Danube to the Aegean. It was a magnificent triumph for Russia. Her influence in the Balkans was restored. It practically decreed the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire in Europe. The most striking feature of the treaty was the creation of Big Bulgaria, which Russia expected to control. The extension of Russian influence was prejudicial to England's interest. She demanded revision of the treaty by the European powers. Austria also cherished the idea of expansion in the Balkans. She also did not like the idea of the creation of the Big Bulgaria or the extension of the Russian influence. The warlike attitude of England compelled Russia to agree to refer the settlement of the Turkish question to a Congress of the European powers. The Congress met in Berlin under Bismarck's presidency. It drew up the Treaty of Berlin. Serbia, Montenegro, and Romania were declared independent of Turkey. The Big Bulgaria was divided into two parts. The northern part was made self-governing principality, subject to the payment of annual tribute to the Sultan. The southern part was constituted as Eastern Rumelia with an independent administration under Turkish suzerainty. A considerable portion of Macedonia, included in the Big Bulgaria, was restored to Turkey. Austria was allowed to occupy and administer Bosnia and Herzegovina, which nominally remained dependent on Turkey. Russia received Bessarabia in Europe and Kars and Batum in Asia Minor. By a separate convention, England secured control of Cyprus as long as Russia retained Kars and Batum. Disraeli's policy at the Congress was bold and effective. He remarked that there was again a Turkey in Europe. He has indeed thwarted Russia and secured to Turkey some of the territories. All that he has done was to prolong the process and multiply the pain of extinction. Disraeli characterized the treaty as peace with honor. The treaty was an ironical commentary on the good faith of the powers, whose declared official policy was to maintain the integrity of Turkey. The fact was that the powers care neither for Turkey nor the nationalist ambitions of the Balkan people. They sought to harmonize the conflicting interests by a policy of compromise and balance of power. To set off the Russian acquisitions, Austria was allowed to occupy Bosnia and Herzegovina. It was a direct blow to Serbs' national sentiments, who desired union with their fellow Serbs of Serbia. In checking one power in the Balkans, it let loose the other power. The result was that Austrian-Serb rivalry aggravated. In the long run, it directly led to the First World War. The division of Bulgaria was a cruel blow to the national aspiration of the Bulgarian people. It was done to please Austria, who feared Big Bulgaria would be a Russian satellite and might be an obstacle in future Austrian expansion. The cessation of Macedonia to Turkey caused the First Balkan War of 1912. The curtailment of Bulgaria led to the Balkan War of 1913. Bismarck posed as an honest broker. He really favored Austria. As a consequence, Russia was deeply annoyed. Here was the remote origin of the estrangement between Russia and Germany, which before long divided Europe into two rival camps, the dual alliance of Russia and France and the triple alliance of Bismarck. The political situation in Europe began to take shape, which produced the Great War of 1914.